What's up, my wizards? It's Dev. Mtg down there on your YouTube screaming like it a magic. And you know what? Our last Patreon poll ended in a tie, so it's up to me to break that tie. So I cast my vote for a lady I've been making eyes at since core set spoiler season makes me think we can actually Mardu the damn thing again. Today, let's talk about Kaalia. Let's get to it. You made it through the intro. Congratulations. Now, Kaalia Pardon is a card that immediately turned my head that way as soon as I saw her during spoiler season. She reminds me of sort of a mini Niv Mizzet, and I like me some Niv Mizzets. All of them, actually, but specifically Niv Mizzet Reborn. But she costs 3 mana less and is like way easier to cast than Niv Mizzet. And there's a possibility that she draws you 2 or even 3 cards. So, had to play this, not just for that enters the battlefield ability. You know, I like me a good enter the battlefield ability, but also based on stats. 3 mana, 3/3 flying vigilance, that is right where we want to be. Now, though it might be fun to dream about drawing 3 cards on turn 3 with your Kaalia, most of the time she's only going to draw you the 1 card. That said, we want to at least draw that 1 card, so we are playing 16 different things that Kaalia can hit when she comes into play. Now, all that said, sometimes Kaalia will draw you more than 1 card, like right here, and that feels really good. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. There's some deck building concessions one has to make when building around Kaalia. And that's mostly that we have to play a bunch of angels, demons, and dragons. Now, we've got some of 2 of those and then a whole lot of another one of those. Can you guess real quick? Pause it. Anyway, here's the deal. This is mostly an angels deck. We've got 16 different targets for Kaalia to hit when she enters the battlefield, but 12 of those are angels. And that dovetails nicely into my next point, because before I'm going to show you anything that Kaalia can hit, which is the bulk of the deck, I have to show you the other most important creature in the deck, and I didn't even think I was going to play this card to begin with. But it turns out that Bishop of Wings is just the craziest card in Standard. Now, the whole time, the deck needed 2-drop creatures, but I was really reluctant to play a creature that needed 2 white mana to be cast on turn 2. It turns out that we've got 18 white sources in the deck, all told at the end of things here, so it's not too hard to get this down on turn 2, and I think it is worth contorting the Manabase to do so. Once the angel count approached 10 and 10 plus, I really considered Bishop of Wings, and I'm glad that I ended up trying it out, because all things said, it's probably won me more games than any other card. Now, first of all, and very importantly, Bishop has 4 toughness on turn 2. That means it's going to block pretty much anything and hold down the ground in the early game, which this deck really needs. The 4 toughness also means that it's not going to get lightning striked anytime soon, and most red removal, aside from Lava Coil, isn't going to be doing much against this card. It doesn't guarantee that that means you'll get around to the next turn and actually get advantage out of this card, but it does help a good bit. Now, one thing that looks awkward is playing Bishop into Kaalia, because you're not getting any immediate value out of your Bishop at that point. But if you don't have a 3-drop angel to start the game in your hand with your Bishop of Wings, then Kaalia can just bridge the gap a little bit. For instance, if you play Bishop into Kaalia, this will help you get a 4-drop angel, of which there are a few, and that will guarantee value off of your Bishop on the next turn. There's also just the chance that you'll go turn 2 Bishop, turn 3 Angel, turn 4 Angel, turn 5 Angel, just curve out that way and gain 12 life. And if they do sweep you or kill any of your Angels, you get some spirits. It's just a really good magic card, y'all. And multiples are insane. Like in this game, we have 3 Bishop of Wings on the battlefield. We play a Lyra Dawnbringer, our opponent just scoops. And Bishop double spells really well too in the later game, like this clip where we're able to Bishop into Seraph of the Scales on the same turn, and that helps us restabilize right then and there. But now it's time to get to the stuff that Kaalia can fish for, because I promised you 16 epic fantasy monsters in this deck, and we've got exactly that many, it turns out. First of all, let's start with the angels, because that's kind of the most important part of the deck. We've got Bishop of Wings in here, yada yada, so I want to go ahead and show you the 4 Resplendent Angel that we're also playing in the deck. Now, just going Bishop of Wings into Resplendent Angel is a pretty sweet enough sequence right there. Go ahead and gain 4 life at that point, and even if they do kill your Resplendent Angel, you still got some value off of it, and you'll leave a spirit behind. I'm telling you, Bishop of Wings is insane, but Resplendent Angel can hold down the game all by itself. You know, if it's the only creature on your side of the battlefield, that's actually kind of fine so long as you have 6 open mana. But let's get on to the 4-drop angels, all of which are incredibly important to the game plan. Not only do we want to be able to follow up Kaalia with a 4-drop angel that she draws for us on turn 4, so we need a fair amount of 4-drops, but we also, ideally, want to be able to go Bishop of Wings into Kaalia into 4-drop angels. So again, these are vitally important, but we've got a bunch of really good 4-drop angels. So we're playing 2 copies of Aurelia to start it off, because I think this is my favorite of the 4-drop angels right now. That's due in large part to the fact that if you go Kaalia into Aurelia, then you can go ahead and use Aurelia's boost to make Kaalia 5-power flying vigilance attacker, just like this clip here. And that can actually be a really nice aggressive thing to be able to do that relatively early on in the game. Aurelia's Mentor is also a factor a good bit of the time because if it gives herself the boost at the beginning of the combat step, and that means that she can put a counter on Resplendent Angel or Kaalia. It's kind of a lot of options. You can put a counter on Bishop of Wings if it's attacking, which has come up more than once. So just keep that in mind. The Mentor is actually surprisingly very important in this deck. A lot of good things about Riri, and she's got to be in the deck, but only as a 2-of because she's legendary, there's that much. But again, we've got Kaalia in here to help draw it, so we really don't need to play too many copies of these legendary 4-drops. Like Shalai, we're playing 2 copies of this too. This is another really important card for the deck. Now, we can't turn on the activated ability in this deck, but we really don't care. All we really care about is giving us and everything else that we control hexproof, because that will sometimes dash an opponent's hopes outright, just by that alone. This is a very powerful ability that forces your opponent to deal with Shalai before they do literally anything. Sometimes you can foil whole mass manipulations by having just 1 Shalai out, because they have to target just Shalai with the mass manipulation. And many different incidents like that will come up when you have a Shalai out, but most common is just going Shalai into pretty much any 5-drop creature, because that's often a game-winning combination in of itself. Now, I'm also playing 2 Seraph of the Scales in the deck. Not legendary, but I'm still just playing 2 copies of it. We're kind of cramming the 4-drop slot a little bit in the deck, and there's even another 4-drop I want to play after this. We'll get to it a little bit later, but needless to say, we can't play too many 4-drops, so I think we only need a couple of copies of this card, but it comes in handy a lot. Seraph is just a huge problem to deal with in just about any situation. Yeah, they can just lightning strike it. It's got the 3 toughness, but it leaves behind 2 tokens. And if you've got a Bishop of Wings, or even 2 out, like in this clip, it just fills the board with tokens if they deign to actually kill your Seraph. But while it's still on the battlefield, it's a headache to deal with in combat. You'll get free attack steps in with this some of the time because you can just make it go Vigilant, get in for 4 flying, leave it up on defense to let it go Death Touch if it has to during your opponent's attack step. That means that we can take out stuff that has hexproof like Carnage Tyrant, seeing a little bit more play in green-red dinos nowadays, and even other decks. It's important to have an answer to that, but no matter how big a creature gets, whether it's a giant Hydroid Krasis in the air, perhaps, this can take it out, and that can be really very important. And yes, I know the Hydroid Krasis in that situation will trample over, but this deck gains a lot of life. We'll talk about that a little bit later. As it is, I think we only need a couple of copies of Seraph of the Scales, but it's been vitally important more than once. I guess you could say it really tipped the scales. Waka waka. Anyway, I think the most important angel in the deck, one that actually does tip the scales. I'm not going to say it twice, but I guess I just did. But anyway, I don't think anyone would argue that Lyra Dawnbringer is the most important angel that we could play in the deck. So let's throw a couple of copies in there too. Again, legendary, but Kaalia is going to help us draw this an awful lot. So I think 2 copies is all we really need. Now, one of the best combos in the deck is just Lyra with any other angel. Just Shalai into turn 5 Lyra is especially good. You want to see Mono Red scoop up? That's a good way to do that, is honestly just resolve Lyra at all. And you will usually win against most aggro builds, especially lower to the ground stuff like Mono Red. I have seen plenty of people automatically scoop to resolve Lyra Dawnbringer, especially if you have a Resplendent Angel out. That's pretty much curtains too. There's just so many ways that Lyra Dawnbringer is not only good with other cards, she synergizes with every other angel in the deck, but if she's your only creature on the battlefield, you kind of feel good about that too. Now that does it for the outfield. Please get that joke. But we've got a couple of designated hitters in the deck too, because obviously Kaalia doesn't just get us angels, he gets us demons and dragons too. So we got some choice cutlets from both of those creature types that we can play here, starting with a couple of Skarg and Hellkites. Now, the deck is full of 5-drops. There's 5 total 5-drops in here, but it's totally worth it at the end of the day, especially considering you get to play Skarg and Hellkite. The card is just crazy, and it makes for crazy curves, too. If you don't get Lyra on curve on turn 5, then honestly, just going like Bishop of Wings into Resplendent Angel into, 4-drop Angel or something on turn 4 into Skarg and Hellkite, that's going to win you a bunch of games too. And the haste is very, very important on this card. Don't get me wrong, getting the +1/+1 counter can be important against 4-power flyers, of which there are a few in this format, even other 5 toughness flyers that you want this to stack up well against. That +1/+1 counter can mean a lot, and so can the activated ability against aggro decks. But trust me now, the haste is insanely important in this format, full of planeswalkers that you want to eat up, and even planeswalkers and other spells that have the ability to bounce creatures back to your hand. A card like Skarg and Hellkite with potential haste is very good right now. Actually does it for the dragons end of the bargain. Just a couple of dragons and a couple of demons to go with our 12 angels. I guess we'll start off the demon suite here with a copy of Doom Whisperer. Just one copy of this. Again, we're really pushing the 5-drops. This is the last one. Don't want to play any more than this, but I did want to slip another demon in the deck to just slightly increase the probability that we're able to draw extra cards off of Kaalia. And you'll be really happy when you get, when you see a Lyra Dawnbringer and this off of Kaalia, rather than just 2 Lyra Dawnbringers, only one of which you can actually draw. Plus, you know how I said the deck gains a lot of life? Well, again, we'll get to that a little bit more slightly later here. But the deck gains a lot of life, so Surveil 2 can actually be really cool. You can just basically Surveil for free a few times, depending on what your life total is, to make sure that you get whatever you need on the next turn. And, oh yeah, stats. Flample 6/6. Turns out that kind of raw power is going to just get through for damage like crazy. And it does. It holds down the air if that's what you needed to do. But for the most part, this just creates lots of damage and makes sure that you get the cards that you need. And again, we have the life to spare. Doom Whisperer goes in. But I couldn't resist rocking the bells. See, D-Lord Beelzebub will often draw us a bunch of cards. Usually it's always going to draw us the 1 card, right? But sometimes this will draw us 2 or even 3 cards, like this clip right here. And times like that just feel really, really good. But it's always at least going to replace itself in your hand and put up big 6/6. Again, just stats. Just stats for days between Skarg and Hellkite, Lyra Dawnbringer, this Doom Whisperer. We just got like all the biggest dudes in the format, which is very often how you're going to win games too. It's just by having giant dudes. And Demon Lord is one of those. But it happens to be a giant dude that's kind of like Kaalia. Just 3 or 4 turns later, in that it's going to put a card or 2 in our hand most of the time too. And that's kind of one of the problems that Mardu had, and black-white decks in general tend to have, is that they don't really have that many good card advantage pieces. But if Kaalia can draw us a card on turn 3, Bells and Lock will draw us cards later on in the game, all these little ways that we have to generate card advantage that we didn't previously have are very important, and Bellsy is a big part of that. Now, we actually are playing one more creature in the deck, and this is the very last slot that got filled. It's not, of course, the end of the deck. There's more cards to talk about, but I've had those slots filled forever. As far as the creatures go, though, this is the very last thing that I filled, and probably the thing I've experimented with the most in the construction of this deck, because I've tried Treasure Map, but it turns out that didn't work very well. The deck's trying to curve out. We've got a bunch of 3-drops in the deck, so if we get Treasure Map on turn 3, we won't be able to scry till like turn 6. It doesn't work most of the time. I've also tried multiple knights. I've tried both the black and white knights. It doesn't feel right to kind of separate them either. I'm not sure which one is better in game 1 in this format, so in the end I just didn't feel like they were good calls. I've also tried like Kitesail Freebooter in this slot. Power's just not where I want it to be on that, even though I had really high hopes for it. In the end, though, I think the best way to fill this slot, if you're looking for a creature, and I think we definitely are, is Tithe Taker. Just 3 copies of this. This will keep your opponent off of stuff for at least a turn or two, and sometimes that can be really important in a deck that's just trying to curve out. If we can sort of generate tempo on turn 2 and then start really curving out the way we want to from turns 3 to 5, and sometimes this extra little tax effect will go a long way towards just winning us the game outright. Plus, along with like Seraph of the Scales and Bishop, this is yet another piece of sort of wrath protection that'll leave a creature on the battlefield when it dies. I think it's really important to have cards like that in this deck to give us a little bit of more resiliency. We needed a bump there too. Now we've got a fair amount of non-creature cards in this deck, but most of that is removal. We'll get to that in a second, but first, I want to talk about Sorin. This, we're only playing the one copy of in the main deck at least. There's another one on the board, but this card really impressed me. I only kind of tried it out. In passing, I thought that it wasn't going to stay in the list for the entire duration of me making the deck, but it turns out that the card impressed me enough to definitely warrant its sort of, cemented slot in the list. This card just does so much. First of all, the super sweet tech is to have a Bishop of Rebirth and a Resplendent Angel out, play an Angel, and then +2 Sorin. That way, you've gained 5 life. Don't tell nobody about that. That's hot tech. But honestly, the card's just good by itself. This is even more wrath protection than I've already mentioned, and it goes really well with the aforementioned Tithe Taker. We just came off that card, but, if you're looking to fill the 2-drop slot like I was talking about, Creature is a good type to fill it with because we're playing Sorin, and the ability to get back 2-drops and still have a relatively high loyalty is very nice, but sometimes this will get back a 3-drop creature and still have at least the 1 loyalty. That could be important too. Get back a Kaalia, get that enter the battlefield trigger again, and still have your Sorin on the battlefield. All gravy. And sometimes this will even come back and, you'll just dump all the loyalty on it to go ahead and get a 4-drop out of your graveyard. That's happened plenty of times too. Just drop a Sorin, go ahead and get an Aurelia back, make sure that Kaalia attacks for 5. There's just all kinds of play lines that present themselves with a Sorin on the battlefield. For a good example of one, here's a game where we just got Cleansing Nova'd and everything gets wiped off of the battlefield, but Sorin can get Hellkite out of our graveyard and finish the game off by attacking with a hasty Hellkite. Hey, there's that haste that matters, again, talking about that earlier, but we just finished the game off with a Lightning Strike that same turn pretty much out of nowhere. Aside from even that, though, the secret tech with Bishop of Rebirth and the reanimating the creatures and whatnot, there's also the lifelink on your turn, which is crazy. Combined with Lyra Dawnbringer, giving all your angels a lifelink, and Bishop of Rebirth gaining you all the life in the world, especially if you have multiples out, Sorin can make it to where you just get to these absurd life totals. Let me go ahead and talk about this because I've been kind of teasing it all video, but here's a quick montage of clips. Here's one where we win the game at 39 life. That's pretty impressive, but here's one where we win the game at 40 life. If that wasn't cool enough, here's one where we win the game at 43 life. Seems pretty nice, but hey, here's one where we're just chilling at 71. Just the amount of life that this deck can gain, all within a few turns, really, makes me kind of want to play a Johnny's Strength of the Pride in this thing, to just wipe the opponent's side of the board once we get post 35 and take it right there. Now, the whole rest of the main deck at this point is removal. We're playing 8 different pieces of removal because Mardu has access to some of the best removal in the whole format. As a matter of fact, it's at the point where you have to make some difficult decisions as to what to cut in this removal package. But what we ended up on in the 2-drop slot was 3 copies of Lightning Strike and 1 copy of Cast Down. Now, Lightning Strike will take out the odd Planeswalker or even win you a game here and there on reach damage alone, basically. Just like in that clip I showed you with the Skargan Hellkite and the Sorin. Sometimes this will win by going to the Dome, sometimes taking out a Teferi when it goes down to 1 or 2 loyalty. Lots of stuff Lightning Strike can do, and it can also just kill something on turn 2. That's pretty good too. So, early game removal, early game plays, that's what we need. If it's not going to be a creature, might as well be a Lightning Strike or a Cast Down. I like this instead of going, 4 Lightning Strike or 4 Lava Coil, for instance. I think it's better to do a 3-1 split here because sometimes we'll have to take out stuff that's way bigger than 1 toughness. As a matter of fact, in this format, from what I've experienced at least, Cast Down can be a very, very important card. So I'm at least going to play 1 copy of this because I want to kill stuff that's, 5 or 6 toughness some of the time. Just the amount of Hydroid Crasises that Cast Down has killed is admirable. I think it's at 3 at this point in all my testing, but it is an important creature that Cast Down can kill that very often Lightning Strike can't, so keep that in your diary. But we're also playing 3 copies of Prison Realm and 1 copy of Mortify here in the 3-drop slot to finish off the removal suite. Now, scrying isn't quite drawing a card, obviously, but Prison Realm still does help us get what we want to in the next couple of turns, and very often can help lead to that 4th land that we need, which is really important. I fully endorse Prison Realm. Lots of Planeswalkers going around in the format, and it really helps, too, to have something else just like Cast Down that can kill a creature no matter how big it gets. Really, though, it's just important in philosophy for decks like this mid-range deck, because this is a mid-range deck through and through, to play small ball and even mid-game removal like all of these pieces, because you're going to get a lot of games like this. Here's an example where you just Lightning Strike their first creature, Lightning Strike their second creature, Prison Realm their third creature, and then you drop a Lyra Dawnbringer, and then oops, you finish above your starting life total. This early game removal really helps us do stuff like that. Now we're running 25 lands in here. I already mentioned 18 white sources to make sure that we get not only Bishop, obviously, but, Resplendent Angel on turn 3. White mana is very important to this deck, so 18 white sources. That's what we're prioritizing, but we've also ended up with 15 red sources, respectable, and 14 black sources. We're actually not playing that many black cards in the deck, but we still need 14 to make sure that we can hardcast Bells and Lock and stuff some of the time. It can be important, but all in all, 25 lands is enough to mostly, it should mathematically get us the lands that we need. I already posted this on Twitter, but earlier today when I was trying to get gameplay footage for the deck, I ran into a lot of games where I still had 3 lands on like turn 26. So I don't know what the problem was with today specifically, but 25 lands has been more than enough on pretty much every other occasion when playing this deck. And as far as individual colored sources, we've got plenty of everything that we need. Now here's the sideboard, and if I'm being 100% honest with you, I think this is probably what needs the most work. Mardu just has so many different options in its sideboard suite that it could play, but what we've gone with here is Lava Coil, swap these out with the Lightning Strikes when we know we're playing against X4s, or just a bunch of creatures in general. We're not going to be pointing Lightning Strike at the Dome or at Planeswalkers. Lava Coil's just the better card. Noxious Grasp is in there for all kinds of creatures and Planeswalkers. It would take longer to list them than it would just to say play Noxious Grasp and Fry for that matter. These are both color hosing cards that are good in a lot of specific matches, and I've even thought about putting a one of each of these in the main deck because they're almost never dead in this current standard right now. These are just incredible cards, and they'll definitely come in a lot of post-board matchups. Play these color hosing cards, they're insane. Let me just put it that way. But sometimes you need to kill that Carnage Tyrant or something, or you need another piece of Planeswalker removal outside of these 2 pieces I've just shown you. So when that's the case, you want Angrass Rampage. This is really good at taking out hexproof creatures if you ever do come across them, but most decks you can just nab a Planeswalker at a huge mana value with an Angrass Rampage, so I'm definitely playing a couple of copies of these in the board because they really cover a lot of bases. Also good against the odd Immortal Sun or whatever artifact you might be playing against. There's a lot Angrass Rampage can do. I'm going to make a couple of slots for it. There's also a Mortify in there, a second one for if we know we're up against important enchantments. I want to throw them Mortifies in, kid. There's also a Flame Sweep in there because pretty much all of our creatures are protected from this aside from Tithe Taker. That's the one problem with Tithe Taker is that it's not very good alongside Flame Sweep, but if your Tithe Taker does die, it gives you an Afterlife guy. So that's not so bad. You're not losing much, and you very often won't have both of them on curve anyway, so don't worry about it being too awkward. When Flame Sweep works, it's a very, very good card. There's a lot of flying decks in the format right now. I just showed you one the other day, but there's a blue-green Flyers deck, there's a blue-white Flyers deck, a blue-red Flyers deck, a white-red Flyers deck. They're everywhere right now, especially on the lower ladders of Arena from what I've heard. And so Flame Sweep can be very important to make sure that you kill their Flyers, keep yours. Same thing against, small aggro decks like Mono Red. All these Tokens decks that are going around, I don't know if y'all have peeped them, but they're freaking everywhere for me. Tokens decks are a force, at least where I am on Arena right now, and a card like Flame Sweep can be very good against them. But so can Ritual of Soot, which we're playing a couple of copies of too. We can just play a different game and not play any of our creatures until we can play Ritual of Soot. Don't worry about it. It's not as awkward as it looks. We need a sweeper sleeper like this for when things get out of hand. There are going to be plenty of situations where you're down with losing a creature or two, so long as you kill their board of 14 giant guys. I don't know why I keep coming across Simic decks that can do that with their creatures, but I have. There's also the Leyline of Abundance deck that likes to make its 1/1 elves into like 7/7 guys. So Ritual of Soot can be very good against those lists too. It's just a card that comes in handy an awful lot. There's also another Sorin Vengeful Bloodlord for grindy matchups where we know we're going to lose dudes. And then a Chandra Awakened Inferno that does not have to be in this sideboard. You can totally save yourself $25, but I put this in here specifically against the control matchups and the aggro matchups. Those are two things we want to cover an awful lot, even though they're polar opposites. Chandra can be very good against both of them as functionally another sweeper against the aggro decks, and against control decks as an uncounterable clock. Just really, really good action. I don't want to miss out on, but honestly, you can fill this slot in other ways if you don't have the $25. Now, here's your power rankings here, and the final verdict is 68, which is pretty good, because if you didn't notice, it's just a pile of good cards. It's Mythics.deck. I mean, between Aurelia, Seraph of the Scale, Kaalia, Resplendent Angel, Lyra Dawnbringer, Skargan Hellkite? Is that rare or mythic? I think it might be mythic. There's a whole lot of mythic. Demon Lord, Belzenlock, Doom Whisperer. There are so many mythics in this deck. I think it's actually technically way more expensive to build on Arena than it is in paper. So I took the billet on that one. I've been playing this deck on Arena for a while, and boy did it cost some money. But that said, it's a joy to play. There's just so many different sequences you can set up that really pay off starting on turn 4 or 5. This is just a classic, strong Magic deck that plays fairly, but can also get a lot of value out of its plays. It really does feel like a classic Magic deck to me. Just mid-range, through and through, to the core, play really, really powerful creatures, and efficient removal. It's the name of the game, and this deck does it just about as good as any deck in the format. So give this thing a try if you can. It's a blast to play because you're just playing all the meanest creatures in Standard. And there's something pure and fun and very Magic the Gathering about that. So I don't know. There's something about this deck that makes me feel like it's 1999 again. Just play all your huge flyers and your decent removal and win the game. The way a fair Magic player should. Darn it. So give this thing a try if you can. Despite all the mythics, it's actually not as expensive to play as you might think. It looks like a $500 deck, but it's actually only about half that. So if you're interested, click the link in the description, go to TCG Player, pick it up for the cheapest price you possibly can. It's a fun deck to play, and even though a few pieces do rotate, I still think that, hell, with a few of these pieces, you've had time to get them since Dominaria or whatever. Who doesn't have a couple of Lyra Dawnbringers at this point? Everyone needs them. But, even then, I think it's worth picking up some of the spare parts that you might need that, even though they rotate, really make this deck what it's going to be for the next few months. Try it out. But anyway, I think I'm done babbling. I had a lot to say about this deck. In case you couldn't tell, I really, really enjoyed this one. I hope that shines through in sort of how enthusiastic and fast-talky I am about it, because this deck was probably the most fun deck that I've played in the last season and a half, something like that. It was a really fun deck to play. So, again, there's just something so old-school Magic to me about it that I was really drawn to it. And I hope you like it too, and I hope you get a chance to try it out. But even if you can't afford the deck, I just hope you enjoyed the content. Even if you never shuffle the thing up once, like the video on your way out. Helps your boy out a lot. You can also subscribe if you haven't done that yet. Click that link I was talking about, the TCG Player. Or if you really like my face and you want to support content like this and make it even better, and it has been getting better and better, at least I've been trying to add polish as I go, and if you want to make it even better than that, then join the Patreon, link in the description, or just go to patreon.com/SBMTG. Super special thanks to all the patrons I've got right now, and even patrons that used to be patrons and aren't right now. I just appreciate you. You're the ones that helped us get to the level where we're able to add this polish, add this gameplay to the videos, and if more people support us, we can do even more. So if you're not a patron yet, really, that would help out an awful lot, and I like to think that, when I get new patrons, it shows around here with extra polish and ideas and stuff. So, yeah. Anyway, rant over. Join the Patreon if you can. But even if you can't, I'm just glad you made it all the way through to this part of the video. That shows you care too. Watch time is a good thing. So, do all the things, like, share, comment, subscribe. Let me know how you felt about it, what you do with it differently in the comments section. And I will catch you cats later. I am Dev from the place. I think we finally made it to the end. Thanks for watching, my wizards. Spread love and be kind.